middle classes having fled, it's unclear where change will come from. Perhaps from outside. The owner of a leading newspaper in neighbouring South Africa is Zimbabwean Trevor Nkube. In a recent editorial, he called on Zimbabweans to become their own liberators.
Welcome. There comes a time when that fear that plays at the back of your mind faces the reality of your oppression, and you cross the line and you say, yes, these are the possibilities that might be visited upon me, but I, as a human being, deserve a better life.
Here in South Africa, where Zimbabweans have come to find work or safety in their many hundreds of thousands, there's fairly open talk about what events up north could mean for Zimbabwe. But it's talk in small pockets, far from home, without cohesion or momentum. An email doing the rounds inside and outside Zimbabwe calls for a 1 million citizen march in Harare on Tuesday. It's linked to a Facebook page which only has about 230 members. What could be a sign of online activism is instead greeted with skepticism. Some believe it's the work of the security services, designed to lure activists onto the streets to be arrested. It's the sort of suspicion, laced with fear, that makes any substantial challenge to Mugabe's rule seem unlikely for now. Jonah Hull, AlJazeera, Johannesburg.
Well, 2 former Blackwater contractors will go on trial again in the U.S. for killings in Afghanistan. 3 Afghans were shot and killed in 2009. We'll have all the details of that case. That's coming up. Also on the program, justice served in Iraq. A British private security officer is given a life sentence for murder. All that coming up. Stay tuned.
We do accept that there was very bad mistakes made in our banking area.
Behind the headlines,
most South Koreans are not interested in reunification.
Is the inside story at this time on AlJazeera.
If you're a Nokia user, you can download AlJazeera's news widget from Nokia's Ovis store. The news widget, available on compatible Nokia devices, gives users quick and easy access to real-time news updates from AlJazeera English. See the world in real time. AlJazeera Mobile.
The top stories on Al-Jazeera.
Qaeda, it is Qaeda, not my people, it is Qaeda. Qaeda, yes.
Libya's Muammar Gaddafi tells America's ABC network that Al-Qaeda is to blame for the unrest sweeping his country. Libya's Air Force has reportedly bombed an ammunition depot held by opposition forces in the city of Ajdabiya. And there are reports several people are dead in the capital Tripoli after forces loyal to Gaddafi opened fire on protesters. The European Union has approved wide-ranging sanctions on Libya, including an arms embargo, a visa ban, and a freeze on assets. Meanwhile, China and Russia have backed calls for the Libyan leader to face prosecution for crimes against humanity. While as anti-government groups in Libya have progressed towards the capital Tripoli, control of the country's resources has become key. And as Tony Bertley reports from the opposition-held eastern town of Ajdabiya, the front lines are becoming ever more tense.
The firing may be practiced, but these men have determination and conviction. Both could still be put to the test.
No like Gaddafi, everybody strong. The Ajdabiya people very strong.
Ajdabiya is one of the last main towns standing before pro-Gaddafi forces in eastern Libya. And if there is an attack, this is where the main line of defence will form. 80 kilometres down the road towards Tripoli is the town of Brege, and this is the new front line in this uprising. A little way past here lies Gaddafi territory. This is our area of control, he told me. After 40 kilometres there are Gaddafi forces. They attacked nearby 2 days ago, and there is still danger here. Understandably, tensions are high here as fighters check for escaping Gaddafi supporters and mercenaries. Confusion is easy, speculation is rife. The threat is real as Brege is strategically important, controlling the main road to Benghazi and also one of the country's biggest oil and gas installations. The state-owned CERT facility processed thousands of barrels of oil a day from the nearby fields. Now, like all the country's oil fields, it is in the hands of the opposition, but they are worried. There are fears that in a final act of retribution, Gaddafi will do what Saddam did in Kuwait in the first Gulf War 20 years ago and set the oil installations and the oil fields ablaze. Oil will be the lifeline for the new Libya, but in the old Libya, relatively few ordinary people benefited from the huge wealth it generated. For a seemingly rich oil-producing country, Libya in the countryside has few trappings of wealth.
In Libya, the petrol wealth doesn't reach the people. It's spent directly on Gaddafi and the people around him.
Libya was making around $150 million a day from oil. It's hard to see any of that in AlJazeera, which is now suffering from a shortage of food and medicine. A walk through the local hospital tells the story. It serves 250,000 people, covering an area of 1,000 square kilometres. It manages on a budget of less than 5% of what is needed and survives through handouts and donations.
People maybe died because of shortening happened here. And many of people go to Egypt and Tunisia to treat it there because the facility, no facility enough to cover.
There is much to put right in Libya, much that the people need. But what they need most now is their leader to go. Tony Bertley, AlJazeera, AlJazeera, Eastern Libya.
Well, we're slowly getting an idea of the scale of the humanitarian emergency in Libya, but the truth of the matter is that aid workers are still not able to get in and fighting is still ongoing. So there's no accurate death toll, just estimates. Well, the UN's humanitarian chief, Valerie Amos, has told Al Jazeera of reports that between 600 and 2,000 people have already been killed, and that's in Tripoli. Italy, from its end, said 5 days ago that estimates of 1,000 dead elsewhere were credible. And more than 100,000 people have fled into Egypt, Tunisia and Niger, and that's according to the United Nations. Now, Valerie Amos also said that 100,000 people have now fled Libya to neighboring countries, as we were just telling you. And for more on that, we can cross back to Jane Dutton in Washington. Jane.
Yes, that's correct, Doreen. The UN humanitarian official said Libya's neighbours, Tunisia and Egypt, have agreed to keep their borders open to those escaping the violence. But Amos told Al Jazeera she's worried about those who've been unable to leave western Libya.
The major concerns are about Tripoli and the west, where access is extremely difficult because of the security situation, where, for example, you have many Egyptians who are wanting to come out and are not able to do so, but also migrant workers from sub-Saharan African countries who are also stuck in countries. So opening up access on the west is very, very important for us. We want to see the violence stop.
Now, even if those fleeing the violence can make it over the border, human rights groups say refugees will still require food, shelter and medical care. Refugees International is calling on aid agencies to open up centres to cope with